Prepare to unwind and immerse yourself in a wonderful array of captivating tales for the week ahead. Join us as we set off on our weekly adventure, curating a collection of the most enchanting stories exclusively for your enjoyment. Remember to jot down the timestamps of your most cherished moments and don't hesitate to share these gems with your circle. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you're always in the loop. When does frugal cross the line to cheapskate? Story 1. When they won't chip in for a birthday cake but demand a slice. Warning, long rant incoming. In a previous job, I organized cakes for people's birthdays. Voluntary to have a cake on your birthday. Some people did opt out, that's cool. Also voluntary to donate for cake. What wasn't cool was everyone chipping in $2 for said cake, and this one shrew, who I shall call Big Shrewy Bertha, BBB for short. Yeah, I'm saying B. You know what the word shrew is standing in for. You know. BBB had worked there for years. Same role, same daily tasks. You know the type. BBB believed that her seniority afforded her perks. She never paid for a damn cake. BBB would be first in line for a slice, though. A big slice. AKA twice the size of everyone else. So I monitored for 4 cakes, but BBB didn't give me a cent. I discreetly asked around if this was normal for her. Was she experiencing hardship? Nope. BBB has always been like this. So I waited. Next cake, I sent the usual email, but also included, to ensure everyone who contributes receives a piece of cake, I will be noting who donates. You're still welcome to come sing happy birthday, but if money isn't received by X date, you will be unable to have cake. Then the glorious day came. BBB made a beeline for me. Swear that shrew could smell cake from the car park. We sang happy birthday, then I started cutting. I had my list. Those people got their first pieces. Birthday people get to decide what was done with the leftovers because there would be leftovers. BBB pushed into the front of the line. Me. BBB, you didn't donate, so no cake for you. Sorry. Sickly sweet smile on my face. BBB, I need my cake now. I have important things to do. I'll give you money later. Me. That's not going to work. I brought this cake with the budget of donated money. Side note, I would chip in my own cash if donations were low. BBB, this is not appropriate. This is discrimination. I'm reporting you to my manager. Me, okay, do what you need to do. Please move aside or get back to your important work. BBB storms off hollering about cake and discrimination. Cut to 4 hours later, I'm called into a meeting with the BBB's boss, my boss, and the boss for the entire site. To summarize, BBB accused me of discrimination based on her weight. I shamed her by not giving her cake. It was then I produced my email, which they were all on, the spreadsheet where I had noted who paid and when, and the cake recipe. Those 4 cakes I monitored, I'd done the same thing. I'd love to say the bosses collectively tore BBB a new one and she was on thin ice. They didn't, and she wasn't. There was, however, an email sent to everyone advising that from now on, when people gave me a donation for a cake, they also need to sign next to it. Then, once the due date had passed, I was to scan and email it to management. I did this for 3 glorious years. It was a pain in the butt for everyone concerned, but BBB never ate free cake on my watch. No one gave her a piece from their leftovers. It became an unwritten part of induction. I've been out of the company for over 10 years. BBB is still there. So are some of my friends. Shrew still doesn't get free cake. It's fun to know that you have left your mark on a company even long after you've left. After 10 years, she's still there? Does she have any plans for her career or any goals or anything? Or just be a mooch for the rest of her life? Does she mooch on free food and other stuff? Story 2. I had a roommate who was very practical. She picked up any change she found, even just pennies. She opted for cheaper options on anything where it didn't significantly diminish the quality. She even built a tiny house because she didn't believe that she really needed to spend much on a place to live. It worked well for her. Then there was my other roommate. Conveniently, at the same time, all three of us were living together. Aside from thieving, getting actual furniture from the literal dumpster, and a whole bunch of other goodies, the story of how I came to live with him is probably the best story to showcase his nature. There was him and two other guys living in the apartment before I moved in. There was another friend of theirs staying on the couch while he was looking for a job and a place to live. He was staying there for free. No biggie. I was homeless at this point and had been sleeping in my car in the middle of winter, below freezing at night, so I jumped at the opportunity to sleep indoors, even if it meant having to sleep in an uninsulated garage. I could just toss on a few extra blankets. My future roommate comes up to me after a week and proceeds to tell me I owe him $200 for rent to stay in the garage. I ask him why I'm paying more than he does per week to sleep in a room without heating/air, a bathroom, and filled with cigarette smoke fairly often. He says that he and the other roommates talked about it, and they decided I couldn't freeload, and I needed to get that money to him as soon as possible. Now, he wasn't the one who paid the bills. I asked the head roommate about it later that day, and he told me there was no discussion about freeloading involving me, and that I could basically pay him $50 for the month if I felt like it. I did pay him gladly, and that was that. That is beyond cheapskate. No, that is swindler. That's grifter. I'm glad this person actually communicated. That's part of how some people get away with some of this stuff, saying that they represent someone else. If you communicate and get everything out in the open, this person avoided getting scammed. Story 3. My stepdad is the biggest, most embarrassing cheapskate I know, so here are a couple of examples of the most extreme things he does. Reuses paper towels by hanging them out to dry in my mom's front yard. Uses free tires off of totaled cars whenever one of ours needs replacing, which if you think this is a good idea, I've had 2 near-fatality experiences to prove otherwise. Rewashes my siblings' disposable swim diapers, again hanging them out to dry in the front yard. Uses washcloths as toilet paper and only flushes for number 2, puts bricks in the toilet tank so it uses less water, leaving the toilet constantly smelling like pee, refuses to use AC at any time while living in South Florida, and counts down from 3 whenever anyone opens the fridge, refuses to purchase gifts for anyone unless they were procured at a garage sale, meaning he often leaves my mom and his kids high and dry for birthdays/holidays/anniversaries, constantly pulls over on the side of the road to dumpster dive. His favorite finds are a pair of Tempur-Pedic slippers, ew, and a wooden futon, which I'm afraid to be in the same room with. When a door hinge broke in one of my siblings' rooms 5 years ago, he refused to pay for a replacement and instead hung up a shower curtain, still there to this day, tries to sneak home food from buffets after paying for his meal with a coupon, and my personal favorite, asking patrons at a restaurant if they're finished with their food mid-meal so he can take over the leftovers. Basically, if your frugal actions are making the people in your life embarrassed or uncomfortable, you've gone too far. That is cheapskate behavior. That is all unbelievable. This guy saves and dries out paper towels, but he uses washcloths to wipe? Ooh, that bathroom smells more like pee. Yuck. Yuck. They probably spend more doing laundry on washing that nasty washcloth than this than on toilet paper. Story 4. A cheapskate only cares about cost. A frugal man cares about value. By the way, best succinct description of frugal and cheapskate. My mother is cheap. She'll buy worthless junk that she doesn't need because it's on sale. She'll buy a broken microwave from a garage sale before just buying a proper replacement. When asked why, she'll scoff and say, "Well, this one was only $5. A new one is at least $100. Great. Now we've got 2 barely functional microwaves. Since this happened, the garage sale one is broken fully. Shocker. Our original issue isn't solved. We've got less counter space, and you spent $5 for this. Yeah, saved so much money. I honestly believe she thinks cost has zero correlation to value whatsoever. Like every single light bulb is made exactly the same, so any price difference is just the company ripping off dumb people. I can't trust her to buy anything. Like I'll send her $20, ask her to pick up something we need since I can't, and I know for a fact that she'll have brought the awfulest version of the thing even if I tell her exactly what it is. I've actually told her that come Christmas/my birthday, I don't want anything, because I'm planning to move and don't want any extra junk making that harder. Just watched a woman wipe out because her daughter spilled a soda and she tried to act like it didn't happen. When have you witnessed sweet justice? Story 1. When I was younger, like somewhere between 5 to 7 years old, I had one of those very realistic-looking baby doll toys that had a soft body but had hard plastic vinyl arms, legs, and head. I took it nearly everywhere with me, except for elementary school, as that just wasn't allowed because my mom didn't want it to get ruined. Well, one day I'm out shopping with my mom at the grocery store like I normally did with her. I put baby clothes on the doll, buckled it into the little seat for kids in the top of the shopping cart, and was helping Mom push the cart around like that. We go about our shopping just fine, but the moment that we're about to leave with our groceries, some random lady shows up and starts screaming at my mom for leaving her baby in the cart and how she's going to call Child Protective Services on her for it. A small crowd started up around us, and my mom got really angry and didn't know what the lady was talking about until she pointed at the doll in the cart. It was still buckled into seat. I'd apparently forgotten to take the doll out of the cart. And being a kid at the time, I didn't understand the big deal. I just went up to the cart and proceeded to rip the doll's head off and said, "Lady, it's not a real baby, it's my dolly." She screamed loudly, stared, got red-faced, and then split instantly after she realized her mistake. The crowd disappeared, and my mom was just chuckling a little as she dragged me off to the car with our groceries and headed on home. As a note, with soft-body, hard-limbed dolls, the limbs and her head can easily pop off. I once had an uncle I called Uncle Ugly that used to tear it off all the time. Too long didn't read? Young me rips off a realistic doll's head to prove it's not a real baby to a woman who is shouting she'll call CPS on my mom. Oh, we hear those stories about people getting CPS called on them all the time, and it's just so satisfying to see that person get put in their place. Maybe they should look into this person for if they have kids for not being able to recognize when a baby is real or when it's just a doll. Story 2. I used to work on one of the rides at Rainforest Cafe. They have a mini boat ride you can go on and ride through an animatronic jungle with narrative playing on the speakers. The boats have a weight limit, so we can only let a certain number of people on, and bigger people tend to make the boat lean to one side. Well, one day, this family of 5 pretty big people want to ride together. We try to explain to them that we have to split them up because the boats tend to take on water when overcrowded. One lady took extreme offense to us calling her fat, which we didn't, but hey, who are we kidding here? Raised heck and chewed into my coworker's butt, caused a bit of a scene, and demanded that they all ride on the boat together. I'm operating the ride, and the employee on the other side looks to me, and I give him the nod. Well, they all load onto the boat, which rests on a conveyor belt. I start the belt up, and the boat drops into the river with a big splash. Some of the people inside get wet, and some water fills into the boat. Miraculously, they're still floating. On the ride, we have cameras to see into the jungle to see if someone gets out and messes with the animatronics. As I'm watching them, I see the boat start getting lower and lower, when all of a sudden, the boat begins taking on water like the Titanic. All you can hear are screams blaring over the rolling thunder and animal soundtracks. We had to stop the entire ride and go out to the river to find them all soaking wet and embarrassed as hell, and had to do the walk of shame in front of others waiting to ride. The boat, by the way, sank to the bottom of the river, and the ride had to be shut down until we got it out. River is about 4 or 5 feet deep. Too long didn't read? Fat lady sinks boat in the rainforest. I've never seen a boat at the rainforest cafes I've been to. I laughed my butt off picturing how loud the screams must have been to be heard over the gorillas and thunder soundtrack. Why was the screaming happening if it was 4 or 5 feet deep? Could they not swim? I mean, it has nothing to do with their weight. If they didn't know how to swim, maybe they should kind of stay away from water-based rides of some sort? I mean, really? Story 3. Working in the produce department years ago, we would have children come through all the time and smash fruit and wreck our displays. This was pretty common, and since this was a Walmart, the parents never seemed to care. Well, one day, this little butthole is going right on down the wet case, smashing up everything he can get his tiny hands on. Cucumbers, lettuce, kale, throwing turnips, etc. His mom is there and sees what he's doing and makes absolutely no effort to try and stop it. The other employees and I were just standing there watching all this happen because we really can't scold a customer or her kid. Anyways, the kid reaches the hot pepper section, jalapenos, serranos, habaneros, and starts mashing them up in his hands. Now at this point, we all saw what he was doing and could have stopped it. But forget it. This kid is going to learn a life lesson. The mom and the son finally leave the fresh area and walk on down towards the rest of the grocery store. About 5 minutes after they left, an unholy shrieking piercing through the entire store. The little guy must have rubbed his eyes. We all went down to take a peek, and this kid was in the middle of the aisle, writhing on the floor and screaming like he was being unalived. The mother had no idea what was going on, and absolutely nothing would console him. She ended up leaving her cart there and dragging her kid out while yelling at him to shut up. Wash your hands after you handle hot peppers, folks. At one point, you were just listing vegetables. Then you said throwing turnips. I imagine sharp turnips with places to grip them for throwing. A friend of mine had a kid, when he was about that age, would take him to eat sushi, and he loved the green tea ice cream that they had. And one time the kid mistook a whole handful of, the wasabi for the green tea ice cream, and just popped the whole thing in his mouth. My friend says that scream was the most unholy thing he ever heard and wished he would never have to hear that again. Story 4. So 2 women and their children come up to the tech bench at Best Buy simultaneously and want their free computer setup, which is to basically make sure we don't send them home with one that doesn't work. It takes approximately 15 minutes. So as I begin to unbox one of the computers, the other lady starts complaining that she should go first. The 2 women escalate to shouting and literally striking one another and pulling hair. Now, the problem with this should be obvious. I mean, really, what kind of display is that for children? Also, There was another tech where you couldn't see him that was about to start the other machine setup. So I blatantly tell both women that due to the fact that they're acting so rude that I will wait on neither of them. I close the box up and go to take my break. So my boss comes back and says that I can't do that and that I need to go out and do it. I say he can fire me, but that I will not wait on either woman. They ask the manager to call me out so that they can apologize. I don't think I've ever seen more embarrassed women. Red faces, eyes on floor. I say thank you and begin to walk away. They start to get irate. I respond that just because they apologize to me doesn't mean I have to deal with them. They fumed, and later my boss chewed me out, although I didn't lose my job. The other tech ended up doing both. So what they gained out of it was a 45-minute wait because the other tech wouldn't give out both until the other one was done. All because they were so selfish that they couldn't just have a couple of minutes of patience. Too long didn't read. 2 women in a rush end up in a fight, and I make them wait 45 minutes to an hour for service for being rude. Story 5. I posted this one before, but all my friends have had to hear it at least twice, so here you go. A few years back, my wife and I were driving back from a Christmas trip visiting family in Iowa. There had been a very bad snowstorm, and while the interstate was clear, all the side roads, particularly the less used ones, were very treacherous and unplowed. A little way into the trip, we spot a police car stupidly polishing the ice by spinning its tires and clearly stuck on an on-ramp. The wife was driving and is an expert snow driver, so we pulled our little Ford Escort up behind the police officer and got out to help him get moving. Once he was freed, he drove up the on-ramp and stopped on a clean patch, probably radioing his dispatcher or something. We got back into our car, and as it turned out, we were pretty stuck as well. I got out again to push, but wasn't having much luck, so waved at the cop to maybe help with a shove or two. He rolled down his window, peered back at us, gave the universal shrugging signal for tough brake man, and drove off. 20 minutes later, we'd finally gotten the car back onto the road and were moving again. It wasn't a mile down the road when we passed Officer Helpful again, this time stuck in the center ditch. The wife slowed down just enough so he could see it was us as we waved and drove past. What a tool. A proper cop is the first person to help you out of the snow. Tour guides. What's the worst thing a tourist has ever done under your supervision? Story 1. I once was a tour guide in high school for a group of young Chinese students coming to the rural U.S. on a sort of fresh air trip. They told us beforehand that we had to keep the kids away from water because apparently parents don't value swimming lessons in China, and there's such little open swimmable water that no one learns on their own. We were also told that the kids think swimming happens naturally, like if you go into water, you'll immediately start swimming. Anyways, one of our excursions was to a local reservoir, and the plan was to hike up a hill nearby to overlook the reservoir lake, get a few photos, and then leave. When we got to the top, it started pouring rain like I had never seen before. I'm talking about so much rain you can't see 5 feet in front of you. Then lightning starts striking the lake, and I'm still trying to keep it cool, even though I had never been so close to lightning before. The students were taking it well and laughing, which was good, until they started running directly for the lake and jump in. Apparently, they had also never learned about electricity conducting through water, so I freaked out and started pulling them out of the water. They weren't very far, and a couple of them complained that their phones were wet. In the rain. No one got hurt, but it was a crazy day. We got back on the bus, and the kids started drinking liquor in the back. They ranged ages 9 to 16. So I had to bust them for that, too. Too long didn't read? Apparently, Chinese kids think swimming will just happen if you go in the water, especially lightning-struck water. Wow, that is awesome that you'd get those kids out. I couldn't get myself to go near the lake if there was that much lightning. Really? That's The attitude in China with kids towards water? Chinese people compete in the Olympics, don't they, including the water-related events? They've seen diving. I'm sure they've seen water polo. Do Chinese people see Japanese anime? Because pretty much any Japanese anime I've seen taking place at a school, there's almost always a scene in a pool where they have swimming lessons. Do they not see this? Story 2. I worked at a living history farm museum. I had a kid that was climbing on stuff the whole tour in the farmhouse and trying to get behind the smith in the blacksmith shop during a demo. After the tour, when people are allowed to roam the grounds, I hear his mom screaming and look over to the barn, and this kid has climbed the fence into the field with our longhorn oxen and is trying to poke them with a stick. I walk over and calmly tell him to get out of the field before our lazy oxen decide they've had enough, but this jerkwad decides to look me in the eye and smack Ted on the butt with a stick like it's a riding crop. Ted, bless him, just kinda jumps a little and whips his head around with a what the hell dude look on his face. But seeing as he's a longhorn, he just wipes this kid with one of his horns when he turns his head. Kid goes flying into the dirt and is having a meltdown. Mom is freaking out. I'm like, dude, get the heck out of the pen before Ted actually gets mad. So the kid is crying and trying to climb the fence out of the field, and Bill, who has been watching this whole thing, waits until the kid is almost over the fence and walks up to him and nudges him in the butt with his nose and pushes him off the top of the fence. It was everything I could do to keep from laughing. Kid was fine. Ted was fine. But the kid and his mom were promptly kicked out of the museum. Their dad and little sister were allowed to stay because she was well behaved and was just enjoying petting the goats at the petting zoo. So since the kid had to leave, but his sister didn't, there was a temper tantrum in the parking lot that could be heard all the way to the other side of the farm. But the oxen got some extra grain that night, so I guess they won in the end. Really? No. I have been around horses working security guard work before. And the police horses, that's one of the first things they tell you. Do not stand behind this horse, no matter what. We don't want to have to fill out an accident report about you, and I'm sure you don't want to visit the hospital. Nope, that's just standing behind a horse. I could tell that one kick is going to change my life. Story 3. Not my story, but a coworker's story. He was a tour manager for South America. We tend to work with the more older travelers, 60-ish and above. He and his guests were flying from Lima to Cusco, Peru, which is about 10,000 feet in elevation. There's a group of around 40-ish travelers. Apparently, he had one male guest who had IBS or something, and while in mid-flight, pooped himself. The stench was unbearable, as they were all in a small aircraft carrier taking them to Cusco, so high in the mountains. He said he had to help escort this guy to the bathroom in the back, but as he stood up, the poop just came down his leg. So now he's dragging poop with him to the toilet. Once he got to the toilet, he cleaned it up with the assistance of the aircraft attendant. He was very embarrassed, but not as embarrassed as the guy who pooped himself. Once they landed, the guy who pooped himself is in the bathroom, apologetic, and was cleaning himself up. The guide went into the airport and bought him some new Peruvian-style pants, and they came back to the airport to help dress this guy in the bathroom. I would say that was probably one of the worst stories I've heard happen to an individual. I've also heard of a fellow coworker who guides tourism in Vietnam who had to bail out a tourist from jail one time. She received a phone call in the middle of the night from him in jail asking for help. She showed up and asked the man what happened. The Vietnamese police said he was caught purchasing Viagra and exchanging money for paid spicy companions. Okay, the second story, that was just know what the way is to behave when you're in another country. It's not going to be the way it is when you're over there, when you're living where you are. The first story, I just feel bad for the person. If there was an uncontrollable attack, I know it's not this person's fault. And he was very apologetic. He was embarrassed. I think that was just, it happens. It just happens. Story 4. I'm in the middle of talking and someone's phone rings. Okay, that happens sometimes, and usually they just cancel the call or step outside. Nope. This guy answers the call and starts talking on the phone only a few meters from where I'm standing. I think, oh, he'll just quickly explain he's busy and end the call. Nope. He starts a conversation. The rest of the group glared at him, and I'm put in an awkward position because my workplace put a huge emphasis on politeness. So I suggested to him to continue his call in the hallway, just outside the room we were in, to which he replied, "No, I'm fine here," and went back to his phone conversation. I'm doing my best to talk to the rest of the group, about 25 people, but he's so loud. Eventually, this Chinese woman yells across the room at him, "Shut up! We want to listen to the lady, not you!" Which worked. But I just couldn't imagine the nerve to ruin everyone's experience like that, because you're too selfish to talk on the phone outside. Also, the place I worked allowed photos, but had a strict no photos of the staff rule for privacy reasons. I always explained this at the start, and 99% of people were cool. One day, I had a particularly happy snapper who got right up in a staff member's face to take a photo. Like, I'm talking centimeters from his face to take a photo. The staffer was just some random middle-aged white dude, so I'm not sure why the fascination, but he was livid. It's like I saw it happen in slow motion, so I couldn't do anything to stop it. That guy was removed from the tour. Story 5. Led a scuba diving tour. While signing the safety waivers and all that, one very old man kept telling us that he had a DNR, do not resuscitate. We plainly told him that we are not bound to a DNR, and if he passed out for any reason, we would attempt to resuscitate by our safety training. Pretty much all divers are assuming this guy is gonna unalive himself down there. Probably spit out the rig and go quietly into the night. Dive happens, pretty much everyone is hawk-eyed on this guy. I see him go behind a large coral head and lay down in the sand and spit out his reg. He's only at about 60 feet, so I grab him and wrestle him to the surface. He will not take my backup regulator, so I slam it against his mouth and purge air into his face. We get to the surface, and he is fighting me non-stop, trying to pull all of his gear off. I throw a very hard punch to his jaw and knock him out. Actually trained to do this during dive rescues to keep the panic person from unaliving you too. 3 weeks later, and he tries to sue my dive shop and myself personally. Too long didn't read? Guy tried to unalive himself. What the hell? Drown yourself on your own time.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
What is the worst business decision you've ever seen? Story 1. Holy hell, my time to shine. Prepare for a number of them. Used to work at the corporate office of a major water park in my state. If you ever lived in Utah, you know which one. The year before I started, they adopted a new business practice of offering a season pass to the water park and numerous other facilities for a measly $20 a year. Not a typo. Previously, they had been $150+ a year. Unbelievable, right? It gets worse. The year I started, they ran a new promotion where you buy a season pass for $25, but then also get a $20 gift card back in the mail to Walmart or some other store. You can see where this is going. 2 weeks after I started as a fulfillment specialist dealing with pass issues, they fired the entire call center staff of 30+ people, heaping their phone calls and emails onto my fulfillment team of 8. So in addition to all our work creating and shipping passes, We had to take all customer service calls and emails. It gets worse. For some reason, they thought it was prudent to wait until we had some large round number, I think either 500 or 1,000 passes ready to ship before they would even order the gift cards to send with them, even though there were thousands of passes purchased and pending with this deal. So not only were there massive delays in people getting their passes, sometimes they wouldn't even get the gift cards either because the season was starting and they demanded their passes now instead of waiting for the gift cards too. So double whammy there. Customers angry about how long it takes to get the season passes and not getting the gift cards. After all this and firing the call center, they couldn't figure out why they were still losing money. I quit, and the rest of the team quit as well within 2 weeks of me leaving. Somehow they kept afloat for another year or so, but then eventually the water park closed for a year or two and changed hands a few times. It was recently bought again, renovated, and the new company is offering season passes for $30. The circle of life, I suppose. I am usually for a low price, but in this case, they needed to do their research in the demand on this thing, and I just don't see how they could offer it for so low and keep up with it, especially if they're going to treat the people that are actually putting the passes and gift cards together so poorly. Awful. Story 2. Used to work for a small ma-and-pa pet supply store who never got with the times in terms of technology used and shady choices. They were still using registers where you had to manually punch in the price. They didn't know anything about email blasts. They created a regular email and had me spend 1 week sending out newsletters 73 at a time where I had to individually click on each of the 1,200 names on our list. They claimed the company, MailChimp or whatever, would get their customers' emails and sell them. Like Yahoo, Gmail, and Outlook couldn't do the same by that logic? But when customers complained about taking so long to get the email, they blamed me for it, saying I was taking too long to send them. They constantly picked products to bring in that were pretty much the exact same as the rest of the products. Chicken and rice dog food? We had 8 brands of that. What's one more? We had a large number of small animal customers who would walk out with nothing, but I think they only brought in a few new products maybe twice in 5 years. They would lie to vendors saying they sold more than they did to get more reimbursed during sales. They struggled financially, but expected me to bring in a bunch of new customers on a budget of 0. They never updated anything. I can guarantee the bathroom had mold behind the paneling. They also treated the feeder mice and rats pretty inhumanely. I mean, I get they're going to be eaten, but there were several times one would get injured and they did nothing for the poor rat. One got its tooth stuck and its face was ripped up pretty badly. They stuck it in another cage isolated with hard pellets where it began to starve because it was too painful to eat. Every day I cleaned the cages. I would place some pellets in a tiny bit of water to turn it to mush. I offered it to the rat and he scarfed it down. He never bit me, nor did the other rat when I secretly disinfected his ear after it was ripped off by a dominant male. I hated that place, but stayed for the animals. When they falsely accused me of assaulting someone, but apparently waited 2 months to mention it, I left. I feel bad for the animals who suffer at their incompetent hands. Nobody is safe from these two. Oh, how do you stay so ignorant of everything? It just sounds like they were trying to have a business that was passive income. They didn't want anything to do with it except the money that they were collecting from it. I guess they were collecting enough to be happy enough with ignoring everything. Story 3. I worked for a design/printing place for years, and the owner went from amazing idea to stupid idea on a regular basis. Don't get me wrong, guy is a brilliant designer, totally took advantage of new tech every chance he could and made it work. But he was cheap and greedy, so ruined what would have been a lucrative long-term business relationships. So we did this huge order of promo supplies for a fairly big online casino. Huge for him, about a 20,000 order, with good margins and the chance at long-term work with the company. While it was being picked up, on the spur of the moment, he decided to pad the bill by about $200. The guy picking it up was the son of the casino owner and literally watched the boss do this while I stood at the till. The customer looks at me, smiles, and pays the bill with a huge wad of cash and says, "I know it's not your fault, but my family is very wealthy. We didn't get that way by letting people rip us off. Tell the boss over in the corner he just conned himself out of a lot of money because we loved the work," in a voice meant to carry. My boss did this to Google years ago. We sell something they were hoping to use in their data centers. He kept giving them the runaround pricing-wise because he could smell the gold. They basically went, "Curse you, we're Google," and that's the story of why my boss has been awful for years. In front of them? This is why we need to have regulations against junk fees. I mean, this is just a really greedy person, but there are bigger companies, and I know you can name at least one or two off the top of your heads that do this on a regular basis. Story 4. My old company was intentionally known in our industry as being one of the ideal places to go. We could hire basically anybody in the world in our space to move and work in our office. It was such an absolutely awesome place to work. The CEO decided to cash out when a larger company barely related to our industry decided to buy us. The new company basically gutted everything that made it great, then rushed to go public. The employee stock options were pennies, and they drastically cut benefits. Every time there was a complaint, the answer was, "Maybe you don't understand our vision," or, "Well, we're a public company now." They also got rid of our office, which was located in one of the hottest LA neighborhoods that everybody loved. More than half of the OG senior members have left, and a large number of others are rumored to leave. I was forced to start assisting in hiring, and it was grueling. People would apply believing it was our old company, then find out what's up and go elsewhere. Oh, and the stock is plummeting. I hate the fact that what once was is over. Those jerks ruined something great. It sucks, but it's a pretty common practice in the business world. Buy a successful company, milk as much profit as you can by cutting employees and budgets by as much as you can, then sell it off and wipe your hands of it. Story 5. This one involves my dad. Back in the 80s, he decided he wanted to teach people how to use Lotus 1-2-3, Excel, MS Word, etc. So he bought a bunch of computers for a classroom, and he wrote interactive learning programs and printed out manuals and such. Even without advertising, he had people asking to join his class, but he was never quite ready. This Lotus 1-2-3 program could use more work. He wasn't ready for a class. This MS Word tutorial isn't quite done. The perfectionist in him wouldn't let him expose the less-than-perfect program/class to people. Just yet. He turned down paying customers for fear that it wasn't just perfect. He had taken a loan out from a friend to finance this, but never made a dime. He paid the loan back by selling our cottage, something he regrets to this day. And why? Because he was afraid to be flawed. That taught me a lesson, though. As the old saying goes, perfect is the enemy of done. He could easily have made money and taught his classes, refining the programs to student feedback. He could have covered deficiencies by teaching in person. He was afraid it wasn't perfect, so it was never done. We don't talk about it, or the cottage that we built together. We had the foundation and structure built by pros, then the whole family pitched in to build the interior when we were teens. It saddens me more because it was what he wanted to do, and he went for it, but not quite. My mom is the same way about not being able to move forward because it's not perfect. It's kind of infuriating, but it did teach me not to be that way in my own life. What's an addiction many people don't realize they have? Story 1. Online shopping. It's got me deep. Edit to add. In my case, it's an addiction in the sense that I seem to always use buy now, pay it later on Klarna. I'll genuinely need to just order one thing, but then before I know it, I've made 20 orders for clothing, and then when the high of the addiction wears off, I have to waste the time returning everything, and I retreat into depression, which results in me starting the cycle anew and buying more clothes. I absolutely hate it and can't seem to just quit. Like I know I need to stop and want to, but it's so damn hard. I also don't have the money to sustain this, so I'm botching myself over even more. It's always H&M that has a grip on me. Like I have enough clothes, so why do I need to keep buying more? Oh, impulse buying. My number one coping skill. My husband and I made a pact to only order from Amazon once every 2 weeks. We go over each item in both carts. It's amazingly successful. The amount of junk we were buying is insane. Money saved is also insane. Don't feed those billionaires. Same? New hobby? Let's look at the basics. Oh, but the professional tools are better. Oh, and I need all the options. Oh, and that project is awesome. $1,000 and 20 projects I ignored later? This is the first time in human history that you can order something the second that you think about it, and it shows up at your door in 24 hours. No extra effort required. We're constantly advertised the fantasy of who we could be thanks to useless plastic products drop-shipped to us from halfway around the world. The average person will see between 4,000 and 10,000 advertisements per day. Website ads, influencers, billboards, junk mail. I've recently noticed this about myself and realized how unsustainable it is. But yet, there are companies like self-storage facilities whose entire profit is driven by the average person having more stuff than they need. And I don't know about you, but self-storage units have been popping up everywhere near me in the past 5 years. Was looking for shopping from replies, but let this count. Online makes it obviously a bit easier, but there are still old fashionista that just look at the items online or in stores, but want to go to the store to buy it. And damn, people buy stupid things. What's even worse is that people shop unnecessary things with payment methods/monthly payments. They end up buying a €400 gaming console, for example, and pay nearly €600 for it during a couple of years. But hey, it's just €30 a month. And then they upgrade their television, stereo system, laptop, phone with similar methods and end up being in debt and broke. And maybe there wasn't even need for those upgrades, just short-term dopamine for your achievements. Getting a new expensive item in your house equals achievement. And after that, maybe that customer is some silly plus 50-year-old who thinks it makes him a bit younger and cooler to have modern, top-of-the-line devices at home, just to find himself asking help from younger people to set up and use his new system. And maybe getting frustrated enough not to use them as much as they thought. I'm not sure if it will help, but one thing that really helped me was implementing a mandatory weekend cart cooldown. Unless it was something I absolutely needed right now, but I tend to buy that in person, not online. Oftentimes, for me, putting in a cart gives me a high without spending the money, and in a week I might not like it enough to buy. My mom is not the most technological person in the world, to put it mildly. I usually have to help her out with stuff, except when it comes to shopping online. Especially Amazon. She's like right there. But she also lives in an area where it's actually more advantageous to shop. It's not the easiest place to get to stores and everything. She really doesn't buy unnecessary stuff, just what she needs. Thankfully, she's kind of free from all of this. Story 2. Alcoholism is rampant in the UK, but because drinking is such an ingrained part of the culture, nobody talks about it. Even if you point out that lots of people are By the standards of our own National Health Service, alcoholics, you get dismissed as a kooky health nut and/or a buzzkill. Go to a pub in central London at around 5 p.m. on any weekday, and you'll see hordes of people going there for a couple of pints after work, usually with no food. If you work in London and you don't drink, or just don't want to drink during the week, it can become difficult to socialize with your colleagues. At several places I've worked, if you go to the pub with your colleagues on a Wednesday but decline to drink alcohol, people will give you funny looks, cajole you into drinking, or just generally mark you out as a Puritan or a killjoy. I drink occasionally, but only in moderate amounts and almost always with food. It's nice, but generally I just don't like the feeling of being drunk. It's not just the amount of alcohol Brits consume, it's the way they consume it. We binge drink, meaning we consume large amounts of alcohol a handful of times a week, getting insanely drunk in the process, usually without food, a couple of times a week. It's not uncommon for people to have 4+ pints of beer in one sitting. Young people, 18 to 35, are the biggest binge drinkers in the world. In places like France, they drink quite a bit, but they generally drink slightly more often in smaller amounts and with food, which significantly reduces the amount of alcohol you absorb. When you go to see your GP, internist, every now and then they'll give you a survey which will include questions on how much you drink. When I met my partner, I noticed she drank a lot, not by UK cultural standards, but by clinical standards, and asked how much she drank. Based on her answer, I told her she might want to consider cutting back as I was concerned for her health. She rejected the idea that she drank an unhealthy amount, so I pulled up the NHS drinking questionnaire and asked her the questions. The test said if you're drinking more than 4 to 5 units of alcohol a week, that's way above what's healthy. And let's be clear, technically, no amount of alcohol is healthy. She was regularly drinking 40+ units a week. She got really defensive and upset, so I didn't bring it up again. A few months later, she quietly stopped drinking so much and slowly started talking about how she wanted to drink less. A year and a half on, she apologized to me for how defensive she was and said that what I said really stuck with her and made her reflect. She's so glad she cut back drinking, now only once a month, if not less, and she feels so much more healthy and energetic. I honestly didn't need the apology. The change has been so huge and it makes me so happy to see. It just kind of sucks that we don't have a bigger conversation about it. I guarantee that if you started one, you'd get an unbelievable amount of hate because the country is one big group of mutual enablers when it comes to alcohol. That said, my generation drinks a lot less than older ones, so hopefully that trend continues. What worries me is that people enter the workforce and start drinking more because they want to make friends with colleagues, both because it's nice and because it's often important for your career. I don't know if having nationalized health care has anything to do with it. In America, I found that drinking culture much healthier, and issues with alcohol were discussed much more openly. I had more than one friend who would decline alcohol and say, "I'm 3 years sober," or whatever. And I had such huge respect for that. If someone drank anything like people do in the UK, their friends would express concern and encourage them to cut down or seek help. I wonder whether this is because drinking a lot would spike your health insurance. Drinking is bad not only for your long-term health, but also puts you at greater risk of accident and injury. And in the US, one bad injury can sink you financially if you don't have great health insurance. Drinking is one of the biggest causes of illness in the UK, at massive cost to the taxpayer through the NHS. The government should enact policies to curb drinking, like raising taxes on alcohol, but they won't because that would be so unpopular that they'd lose elections. For the most part, I believe that people should be free to drink or use illicit substances, but be as informed as possible about the risks involved. But in a country with nationalized health care and no way of accounting for the free riding of people who drink and use illicit substances on the back of the taxes of those who don't, it's hard to see how such a liberal policy would work other than by taxation. This isn't completely fair because it makes drinking a privilege for those with more money, but I can't think of a better way without making government health care coverage dependent on health habits. And I don't think it's a good idea to open that can of worms. Brings up some good points about the difference between their healthcare system versus ours. I didn't realize that it would be that much of a difference, that they drank so much in the UK that people in the US might really be concerned about them. I'm just fortunate that with the stuff that I like to do and with the stuff that I get addicted to, like games and such, that alcohol wasn't one of them. What happened to the smartest kid in your class? Story 1. Guy had 3 scholarship offers, lasted 1 year in uni before jumping off a building. Feel sorry for him and his family. I was in a really dark place at the start of this year during my first week of uni. I was the stereotypical gifted kid during secondary school in 6th form, 12 to 18 education total in the UK. Especially during secondary, the teachers would have me check their answers, and if I got a different result to the textbook, they'd have to come in as a mediator to see who's right. I wanted to unalive myself during my first university year. I still struggle with the thoughts. This was made worse by my depression affecting my results, making my grades and performance drop. And because I for so long had valued myself according to academic achievement, it really burned. I felt especially worthless. There's a bridge on the way to the train station in university. It's not a big drop, but it's right above a motorway. I thought about jumping off a lot. I resonate with this story. I can only hope that I don't head back into that dark place when my second year starts. Edit. Wow, this was really heartwarming. I'm so happy so many of you replied. I really didn't expect you to. I was replying to every comment individually, but I just did a scroll through and realized that there are so many more that I thought. You're all so very kind. And you're all strangers to me. It means even more. People who don't know me at all have such a capacity to be kind to me and love me and share their own stories. It's so human. It means a lot for someone who hasn't had many friendships that are genuine. Thank you all so much. You're all amazing. It means so much to me that you all replied, and I'm sorry I myself can't reply to all of you. I started, but it's just a lot. Thank you all. Also, rest assured, I am getting therapy. I am on medication. It's a journey, but I'm doing my best. I can say I'm at a position where I don't want to unalive myself anymore. That's not saying that I won't want to in the future or that I don't still have thoughts from time to time, or even that I'm ready to live. But I at least go through my day generally not wanting to expire. It's a start, right? Just worth mentioning, life is not a race or a competition. You have all of your remaining years to get a degree, and you can only stay alive in the present. I try to ensure your survival first and foremost. Don't be afraid to make changes necessary for your survival. Taking time away from education to seek necessary treatment is a much smaller bump in the road than your body. Take care and stay aware. Oh, deity, so much this. I also was the stereotypical gifted kid throughout school and even at university. I studied law because it came to me easily and was fun. And back then I still believed that economic success and prestige were the most important things in life, and that I had to live up to the possibilities given to me by luck of the draw with regard to smartness/ease of learning. Developed an eating disorder from the pressure to succeed, and because I was not at all adjusted to all the responsibilities of adult life. Started intensive therapy to overcome the ED and deal with life better, but still went through the practical education in law. Here in Germany, After uni and the first set of exams, which exclusively deal with the theoretical side of law, you have to do 2 years of a more practical education in working in the different fields of law and take another set of exams. During that time, I had 2 minor breakdowns which I didn't recognize as burnout back then, but which in hindsight were clear signs of me being overwhelmed. Took the exams, got the first job I applied to, and started working as a lawyer in a big firm. I liked the field I worked in, renewable energies, but hated every single day of work because I constantly felt overwhelmed, inadequate, and terribly scared of failing. Social contacts and things to do for fun fell by the wayside because I simply didn't have any energy left for them after putting everything into trying to cope with work. Managed to do 2.5 years of that until my body said, "Nope, not doing this anymore," and gave me a really bad burnout. Took 5 whole years of doing nothing and 2 inpatient treatments, which were thankfully possible due to the German social and healthcare systems, to recover enough to think about working again, though never in my original field of law. Now I work a part-time job in a super small publishing house, way beyond my facilities and making way less money, and I've never been happier in all my life. I no longer feel constantly overwhelmed or scared to fail because I've set my bars a lot lower. What I learned from all of this is that education, money, prestige, all that is not worth anything if you're not happy doing what you do, except for the odd bad day or annoying task, which are inevitable and normal. I don't regret my way to where I am, despite all the pits I fell into along the way, because I wouldn't know how to appreciate what I am now without it. But the thing is, if you learn to listen to yourself, and with the right medical care, because antidepressants also helped a lot in my recovery and my current everyday life, you can find what makes you happy, and it may not be what you thought it would be. Edit. Oh, wow. Thank you, kind strangers, for the awards. I honestly appreciate them. Edit 2. Hey guys, I just wanted to come on here one more time and express my sincere thanks to all of you who interacted with my comment and had kind conversations with me. I've had 2 very stressful weeks at work. Thankfully, not a regular thing, but sometimes stuff just happens, and felt a bit exhausted and overwhelmed from that. And I didn't think this weekend would be enough to recover fully. But just now I realized that I do feel a lot better than I did this morning, and I think it might have to do with the heartfelt and kind interactions I've had with you guys on this thread. So thank you for helping me feel better. It really sounds like it touches on a lot of us just getting pressure to be what we're going to be at the end of college, ready to take on this career, and to be, let's face it, to be what a lot of parents want us to be. They want us to be successful for their own reasons, or maybe they really do want us to be happy. Sometimes you just need to take a little detour in the path to figure out where you actually want to be. Story 2. After never having even smoked a cigarette or drank alcohol in high school, straight A's all the way through, he got a full ride to a really good university. As a freshman, he dropped acid, walked out in front of a car, and was unalived. Sort of reminds me of a college friend. He was straight, no illicit substances, alcohol. I think he even stayed away from caffeine. Said addiction ran in his family, so it made sense. Decided, though, that immediately after graduation he wanted a huge party and had his first alcohol. Got insanely trashed, but survived for about 20 years. He died of liver failure due to severe alcoholism at the age of 41. I hate that I remember where he was, where it started, but what did we know? I found out years ago that I had one of the lowest cholesterol levels ever measured. Great! Except that the doctor warned that I could easily become addicted to alcohol, something shared with Native Americans, of which I share blood. Never a drinker, smoker, or coffee or caffeine user, ever, even before the news. Now, I have to look this low cholesterol Native American thing up. My brother and I are both and eighth Lakota from my dad's side. We both have consistently low cholesterol. When an idiot physician put me on statins, I humored him after tiring of arguing with him that my cholesterol was already low enough, and my cholesterol plummeted. I ended up with severe and increasing muscle cramps, and my mood, I already live with depression for other reasons, crashed. I won't make that mistake again. Oh, and it doesn't matter what I or my brother eat. Nutritionist-blessed superfoods or pure fast food junk, the cholesterol level don't budge. My brother and I also share a predisposition to elevated blood sugar. I managed to get all the way to type 2 diabetes a couple years ago. My brother hovers in the pre-diabetic range. Now that I'm no longer working at an extremely stressful job, cortisol levels for the loss, my blood sugar is back down into pre-diabetic range. Funny how that works. I drank for a few years, binge drinking at its worst, and I know my brother tried alcohol. Neither of us ended up addicted to alcohol or any other substance. My brother never really drank beyond the initial trial drinks. And one day, I decided I didn't like hangovers, so I stopped drinking. I will still have one glass of wine, beer, champagne at special events like weddings or 50th anniversaries or 100th birthdays, but I usually don't bother. My brother is the same, one token glass for toasts. But I definitely had the mutant alcohol here's a word I don't know, dehydrogenase gene. You'll have to tell me if I got that right or wrong. Seen in Native American populations. He got completely lit on very little alcohol and did so frequently. One time he went out drinking with work buddies and woke up in Mexico. Well, the bar was just a short walk from the airport. Anyways, I'm off to go look up low cholesterol in Native Americans. I had no idea about this. My mom used to swear up and down we had Native American blood, but she couldn't prove it. My dad told me later it's because our ancestors were stay-behind Indians on the Trail of Tears. Fascinating story. Anyway, I also have one of the lowest cholesterols my doctor has ever seen. High blood sugar, even though I eat very healthy, and alcoholism in my family. Mom's story is checking out. Interesting how we got from the smartest kid in class to discussion on predisposition to low cholesterol and alcoholism. But yeah, I'm not saying that if you haven't tried alcohol before that you should do it and get it over with, but it's just kind of hard that you just decide to do that in celebration and you can't handle it. I guess it's just kind of one or the other. I haven't really had a drink or anything like that in decades.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.